Spacebird Media.
Why do so many people find solace in the crackle of a vinyl record? Let's dive in. This isn't just another vinyl podcast, it's a journey into the heart of recovery, through the universal language of music. Each week we share powerful stories of overcoming addiction and life's toughest challenges. Together, we'll uncover how the warmth of vinyl can guide us through moments of vulnerability and strength. So, drop the needle, lean in, and let the music heal. Let's get started.
This is Records and Recovery.
Welcome back to Records and Recovery, a chance where we get to talk about all the healing that has happened through the music, whether it's the artists, the bands, the album covers that drew us in, and everything in between. Obviously, sometimes there are faith elements that get thrown in there as well. So between my friends and artists who take the time to join us each and every week, I just love talking music because it is the heart of who I am. And this week, I cannot think of another person besides myself who is as good at it and loves it as much as I do as our guest, Chris Hauser. Chris and I have known each other a long time. We go back to our BBC days, and you can even search that on YouTube if you want to know what that's all about. But Chris Hauser joins Records and Recovery. How you doing, man?
Hey, Ace. Thank you for having me here. I've been on, I don't know, 15, 20 podcasts over the years, and of course people keep bugging me, Hauser, when are you going to do it yourself? And I'm like, I'm kind of too busy to commit a bunch of time to it. I know it's very time consuming, but I know it's in the future. I've got all the equipment. It's coming. I promise. So
that's fantastic. Well, and one of the things I love, Chris, is that especially following you as a friend, but also your social media, you always post what, for those that are watching this on YouTube, they can see your wall of vinyl that you display. So explain your methodology of why, like, first of all, who's back there today, but then how do you pick them week to week?
Right. So this people will be able to watch this YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying this on YouTube
Yep.
as well? So
Yep.
I'm going to move my camera here. So here is the chair that I sit in. That's the chair I sit in every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and call radio stations. And so because I'm sitting in that chair and I'm not in front of my computer, I have 2 LPs on the wall and then 6 LPs over in a cabinet. And so I am switching them out every week so that I'm looking at new artwork while I'm sitting in the chair. And so that I'm not looking at the same thing week after week. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a vinyl collector. I gave away, oh, this is painful. During one of my moves in the 90s, my lovely wife said, how long are you going to keep breaking your back moving all this vinyl from one place to another? And I said, you're right. And I got rid of probably 2,000 LPs. And I know that there was a lot of really, really important stuff in there, mainstream and mostly Christian.
Yeah.
That was over 30 years ago. I built it back up quite a bit, but I'm also a bit of a historian, and people sometimes call me a little bit of a Rain Man, like a CCM Rain Man. Like I've just got this weirdo ability to put dates and places and times and artists and albums together and singles that went out.
Yeah.
So on my wall this week is Rust Half Metals, which was reviewed in June of 1985 in CCM magazine 40 years ago. So I'm drawing attention to that album. And when people see that album, they automatically, if they're old enough, they go back to what their lives were like in June of 85.
Yep.
How big this record was. How Russ went from success in the Imperials to just stratospheric in a period of about 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm highlighting that, and then a Randy Stonehill record that was reviewed in CCM June of 1980. So that's 45 years old. And so then I'm giving sometimes um little hints or little factoids about records or my involvement with them. I worked with Randy Stonehill at Murr in LA in the late 80s, and he's just one of my favorite people. And so I've got those kinds of connections with people. And Russ Taff, I was just with Russ a week ago at his concert in Columbia around the new record Cover Story. So that's a long answer to a very simple question about why do I have vinyl, 8 different copies of vinyl up on my wall every week.
It's great. Well, and before we get into a little bit more about what you do and how you got into that, I want to go back to young Chris. What is your earliest memory of music?
I think it was probably the Beatles. Um, I think the first 45 I ever bought was probably 1967. I need to get my facts straight on that, but it was a song called Walk a Mile in My Shoes by Joe South.
Okay.
And he was a big time country pop songwriter in Nashville. And he had some hits. Games People Play was another one that Joe South did.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first 45 I ever bought. And I was just captivated by music as a kid, as a young kid. I'm sure I listened to Beatles. My dad was kind of a cool jazz aficionado, so I was raised on Dave Brubeck and music like that. But I can go back, Ace, to a moment in 1971 when I was 10 or 11 years old. And my parents, we were Methodists. We were a Methodist family, church going, not evangelical per se. And we lived a half hour from Binghamton, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my dad taught in that area. He taught school in the Triple Cities, the southern tier of New York State. And he took us to Godspell in 1971.
Yeah.
So we saw a musical performance of Godspell done by people from Binghamton,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so moved by that whole experience.
Yeah.
The music, the dancing, the choreography, the lights, the songs, it just blew my mind. And I knew the story of Passion Week and all that. So that was on a Friday night. The next day on that Saturday, again, I'm 10 or 11. I come bounding. I'm going to guess I'm 10. So it's early 71 leading up to Easter. And I come bounding out of the front steps of my house in my small town, and walking up the street is my best friend's mom, Mrs. Thomas, and I meet up with her, and I said, Mrs. Thomas, I've got to tell you about Godspell. You have got to go see Godspell. And I'm just giving her the full on, I'm 10 years old. I'm giving her the full on pitch for Godspell. And I said, it's happening again tonight. So you're going to go, right?
Mm.
And this woman who's got lots on her plate,
Yeah.
she looks at me and she says, now that she realized what was happening, she goes, oh, Chris, I'm sorry. I've got something else going on right now. I've got something else happening tonight. I can't go.
Yeah.
This was the first moment, Ace, that I can remember. I want to get someone to love the musical experience that I just fell in love with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
This
that's
is 55 years ago.
yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about music, and I think that's where you and I connected so long ago is in thinking about like, wow, have you heard this? Well, if you like that, you got to listen to this. Like, that's
Yes.
what I love. We're all 2 degree separation based on our musical taste and preferences. So with that,
Yes.
if you were to tell someone, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a vinyl that they own, but just music in general, I don't want the traditional answer. I want you to give me the Chris Hauser, this is what I believe you need to have in your collection. What is the album that's a go-to of like, oh, have you heard? Who would you suggest?
Interesting. It depends on what I know about a person and what I think that they're going to love. I can tell you that a group that gives me consistent joy is a group called the Polyphonic Spree.
Okay.
And the Polyphonic Spree is about 20 people on stage. They have a lead singer and a small choir of girls, and they have a full instrumentation, including orchestral instruments like harp and then they have a brass section. And I tell people it's up with people on crack.
Mm.
It is so joyous, and it's not Christian. It's not, but it's deeply spiritual music to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have traveled out of state to go see them. I tell people I would run away with that circus for a week if I could, and either sing in the choir. Oh, and they're all wearing robes.
Yeah.
They all wear robes. They have opened for David Bowie. When they tour, they tour on in a hockey bus that's all bunks and no lounge in the front or the back. It's just all bunks. And to pass the time of day, they stand up in the middle aisle. I love the Polyphonic Spree. I geek out around them. One more band that I'm so into that was only around for 2 albums in the early 90s called Jellyfish.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Queen and 10cc. I don't know. Uh, it meets bubblegum pop music
Mm-hmm.
and stand-up lead singer drummer, and they just never broke through. There's something about me cheering on the underdog. Polyphonic Spree have never had a big hit on the radio, which got them to play in arenas other than opening for other artists.
Yeah.
Jellyfish, the same thing. They should have been monsters. They should have been monstrous. They should have been hugely successful. They were not, but I've got something in me that is always pulling for the underdog too.
We're hanging out with Chris Hauser. His enthusiasm is infectious on this week's Records and Recovery. Chris, I want to know, as you talk about, albums and songs that have brought you joy, what about those that you gravitate to when, you're in that season of, something's happening and, you got to deal with it, or you've given it to God and you're waiting on him to act or react? What are some of those songs that have stood out and helped you?
I mean, some of the songs that I have that I've even worked. So let's take a quick moment here to just say I have been in the Christian music industry since 1979. I was in radio from 79 to 87 in Syracuse. Then I was hired out of radio to go work for a record company. So I'm the first guy in our industry to go from one side of the phone receiving promo calls
Yeah.
from record companies to go across the phone line to the other side of the phone.
Yep.
So my job since 1987 has been calling radio stations and getting stations to play the songs that I'm being paid to work. You've been on the receiving end of
Yep.
hundreds of those calls over the years. And I tell people that I make a great living talking to my friends all day long about music I love.
Yeah.
Because being independent since 98, I turn down the records I don't want. I turn down the clients that I think are going to be too high maintenance and never happy.
Yep.
I turn down artists I don't want to work with or that I believe in, and that I get to talk to my friends at radio because they are my friends. They're not my adversaries.
Yeah.
And I get to just bring songs to them that I believe in, and they know that I believe in them. And trust is so important in this job.
Mm-hmm.
So all to say, I've been with Lauren Daigle from the beginning. There are songs like You Say that mean so much to me, that move me deeply. Tasha Layton is another artist who's done some really, really amazing songs. Her song that kind of broke through to top 5 status at radio during COVID was It's Gonna Be Okay, was the subtitle on the song. And songs from Gungor, the Michael Gungor Band, have always meant so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say one of the most beautiful albums, it's in my top 20 of all time, is a record that came out in 81 called Come to the Quiet by John Michael Talbot,
Yeah.
who's a monk in Arkansas. And he is in a group there. I don't think commune is right, um, but it's his that record Come to the Quiet front to back is so contemplative, so peace giving and life giving to me.
So, Chris, when you are choosing songs, are you listening as a fan first? Are you listening as what's working with radio? Or are you choosing based on, wow, this one brought me to tears. I can't wait to see how it's going to affect people in masses. What is that
Yeah.
criteria for you?
It is always that mix. I mean, you kind of nailed it right there. So sometimes it's 30, 30, 30. Sometimes it's 50% of one and 25% of the other two.
Yeah.
Um, but I have independent artists who are not signed to labels come to me 5 times a week, sometimes 8 times a week. And I have something prepared for them that I send them to tell them how competitive it is, how hard it is to break through on Christian radio.
Yeah.
There's 50 songs that are fighting for one available slot at each major radio station every week. And when that radio station chooses that one song out of those 50, the 49 leftover songs roll to the next week.
Yeah.
So I try to instill in them just how really truly competitive it is. And I was saying that point to get to your question. Do you remember your question? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
just in your criteria of how you pick a
Oh,
song.
yeah. What I say in my piece that I send to those people is if you send me your song and I listen to your song and angels come in the room and I fall on the floor and gently weep as they flap their wings,
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to work with you on this.
Yeah.
And this literally happens, Ace, about once every 10 years.
Well, and
It's very, very.
I also want
Go
people to
ahead.
understand because of that criteria, because you have been doing it as long as you have, mention some of the big songs for those that know the songs but understand how important it is to have a promoter that believes in the artist, believes in the song, sees the power of the ministry of that song. So what are some of the big songs? Your list is long and distinguished, but I can't remember them all.
Well, I mean, Amy Grant, I worked 4 songs for Amy Grant from the Lead Me On record that CCM said was the greatest Christian album of all time. Um, I've worked all of Lauren Daigle's music from 2013 with her Christmas song "Light of the World" um, at Christmas of 2013 up to today.
Yeah.
Russ Taff, I worked 2 records for Russ Taff in the late 80s, including "Walk Between the Lines," that song, and "Shake," and "Farther On," and "I Cry." Um, And I mean, Brandon Heath, I've worked with Brandon Heath for 20 years.
He's
If
great.
you've heard a Brandon Heath song on the radio, you can kind of trace me back to most of those. Beautiful Things from Gunger from 2010. Caedmon's Call, which behind the Caedmon's Call um, wave in 97 came Jason Gray, Andrew Peterson, Bebo Norman, Waterdeep, Jill Phillips, Andy Gullahorn, The Normals, Andy Osenga, just a long line of successful artists behind Caedmon's Call. We had 4 number 1 songs from them in 1997, Lead of Love, Hope to Carry On. Um, so um, it's a long, long list. I've had at least a couple hundred number 1s since 1987 doing all this. That's my weekly report card is when the charts come out, and I know how well I'm doing because of my report card.
Mm-hmm.
But but I've been independent and self-employed since 1998, and it is incredibly competitive for anyone watching on YouTube. Like I tell people, in 1987, I had a head full of the most luscious, full, long, flowing locks,
Mm-hmm.
and most of it's been worried off my head in one way or another.
Radio has a way of doing that for sure. You're hanging out with Records in Recovery. Chris Hauser is our guest this week. So, Chris, I am curious your thoughts, because we haven't really talked much about this, even personally, is for an artist who takes off without a promoter, without a label. They just have that hit. And I think there is a misconception that now, because you can put out your own music, that, well, I'll just put it out and everybody, it's because I know it's a great song, it's just going to, I not to bust any bubbles, but I do believe there is a sense of reality, because I'm of the mindset as a songwriter myself, I just want to keep putting out songs that are a reflection of what I believe God has laid on my heart, or a journey that I've been through, and whether that's in blues or worship or rock or wherever it may fall, then whoever gravitates to it, I'm thankful for. But also, I know that the overnight success, as they say, if you can just get a song to trend on TikTok and they do a goofy dance to it, then it's going to be number one. What do you say to that artist that's just trying and they're like, yep, my one song's going to take off?
Yeah. Well, I'll be 65 in a couple of weeks, and there are plenty of times that I feel like I'm the old guy on the porch yelling at the kids to get off his lawn.
Right.
I'm very much old school on this stuff. It is I don't there are younger promoters there are promoters in this business who are younger than I, who understand a lot more about TikTok um and getting those sorts of songs. But I'm not crazy about it, because um part of it is we live in an American idolized society
Yeah.
where it's someone with a pretty face and a great voice and a maybe interesting story, that those are the people who are awarded, rewarded, and break through.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes fear now that with TikTok trends, a person just needs 20 seconds of a great hook,
Yeah.
of a great musical hook to break through. And yet, what does the rest of their life look like? And can they deliver 5 great songs that are 4 minutes running and that can be compelling and have something interesting to say, as opposed to everything on social media is so evanescent.
Mm-hmm.
It is here and gone so fast. Um, and when you see a Josiah Queen or a Forrest Frank, who did have great success first on social media and TikTok, they quickly pulled more traditional people into the realm to publicize and get songs played on radio.
Yeah.
And so there is still, it's not just there's a place for, I think what the work that I do is very instrumental and very important for um, for what gets played on the radio, which is still has 30 million people every week listening to Christian radio.
Yeah.
That's that number has not by and large moved for a
No.
long time.
Yeah.
Even where 30 years ago, Christian bookstores, everyone, Christian bookstores were the places that got all the promotional budgets, and all the marketing money from a label went to, and I was there as a radio promoter, just like looking for crumbs off the table to
Yeah.
use for a promo tour or make a single. And 30 years later, find me a brick and mortar Christian bookstore, and yet Christian radio continues to thrive.
Yeah.
Christian music radio, right?
Yeah, yeah, so true. This is Records in Recovery, hanging out with Chris Hauser this week. Chris, have you ever sought out an artist, like you hear it, like a song that's maybe that has taken off streaming, and you're like, radio needs to get behind this song?
Um, nope,
Not yet. Okay.
nope. And sometimes people do.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've got my head down. I've got plenty of records I'm working. I'm not out looking for work.
Right.
The work comes to me. I'm really grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never at a loss for having great records in my list to talk to radio stations about.
Yep.
So I'm not out looking. I know that there are other promoters who do it and have had some success, and I say God bless them. But that's not me at this point anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the two things that always go into my head is one, you like you were mentioning, like you don't want to just be a flash in the night. You want to have a catalog so that you have a sustainable career. And even if your music changes and morphs like a Beatles or a Taylor Swift or, any of those kinds of angles, you also don't want your first record to be a one and done, and then everything after that, your second album and beyond, then you're like, okay, well, yeah, you just had your one, and then
Yes.
then it questions the art of the person, and are they capable of writing another
Yes.
great song or a great album, or But so let's talk about that for a second. The differentiation, because you and I grew up in an album world where you bought a whole
Mhm.
album and you listened to it start to finish, read the liner notes, loved the smell of it, all the things, right?
Yep.
But gone are those days. Now it is all singles based. Do you think that's just where we're going to be forever, that it's not so much about a full album of collection anymore?
I'm still I still have label clients, um, and artists are working on at least EPs, at least extended play, meaning 5 songs or more
Yeah.
in a package, and then or whole albums of 10, 11, 12 songs, that artists who feel like I that they have something to communicate that's needs more than one song.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will release a song a month, and then they'll make a full record out of it after 10 months, 12 months, and release that. And there's lots of wisdom in keeping your fan base engaged with a new song every month
Yeah.
on streaming services. I totally understand all that and respect it. But I think too, the record label situation is that I was just in a text thread with some friends today about it, is a label has A&R people, artists and repertoire, who are out signing artists, and they are vetting those artists that they, at least in the Christian market, have fairly orthodox beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and have a track record and are stable and could hopefully handle success, or could hopefully handle a slow build to that success, because no one's guaranteed
Yeah.
any of that. And so it's um because the internet is the way it is, and because social media is the way it is, we don't have anybody who seems to be breaking through in those formats on TikTok. You have no idea what that person is,
Sure.
what that person is like per se,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think a label is important in the vetting process of bringing artists who are stable and will and want to be a part of our industry.
Yeah. So true. Chris, before I let you go,
Yeah.
man, on a personal note, what do you love about where you are with God right now?
I love how little I truly know and am certain of.
Mm.
I love mystery. I love the humility that comes from mystery.
Yeah.
I was so arrogant 40 years ago and 30 years ago and
Mhm.
had God all figured out.
Right.
And my life verse is Micah 6:8. He's shown you, oh man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with God.
Mhm.
I also believe that orthopraxy is way more important and interesting to me anyway than orthodoxy. A person can say they believe all the right things, but if they live like hell, that is the loudest message. That's the clarity of how a person's living. So I want to live in love with loving people, walking humbly, and I want to do justice and stand up stand up against injustice. That is how my life is going to preach. And so I where God fits in all that, I am ready for all of it.
So great. Chris Hauser's been our guest this week on Records and Recovery, man. Always great to catch up. Thanks for your time.
Ace, thank you. Good job here today. This has been a fun little half-hour conversation with an old friend. I appreciate it.
Records and Recovery is a Spacebird Media production and a part of the Thesis Radio Network. Find more episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts or at thesis.com.